I'm Jack Kennedy, and they hit a lot harder in my opinion too.
What is up, everybody? My name is Keelan McNamara, and everyone's got a plan until they get hit with my views.
I am Hunter Boss. He just wanted to go to the distance by the looks of it, but he couldn't even do that.
And this is the MMA Island Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MMA Island Podcast. I am Jack Kennedy alongside Keelan McNamara and Hunter Boss. Coming on the podcast again is a very special guest, one of our favorites, Tanaay, Shah. Tanaay, thank you so much for coming on. Tanaay is a host of his own podcast, the Haymaker MMA Show on YouTube, and he's working PFL Media Days along a lot of other things. Very cool. So Tanaay, again, thank you so much for coming on again.
Hey, thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate the shout out and everything. And Viva Mexico, bro. Brandon Moreno.
Yeah.
Shout out.
He made my weekend, so
yeah, absolutely.
Got to give him a shout out.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a stacked podcast ahead of us today, talking about Calvin Kattar, potential return, Rosenstruck versus Curtis Blades being booked, and predictions for the Korean Zombie versus Dan Ige. What a fight night main event. We will be predicting that. Let's go ahead and get into it. So tonight, what do you make of Calvin Kattar returning in potentially October? Who are some potential opponents you think you could face off against? And what do you just think about Calvin Kattar returning?
I absolutely love Calvin Kattar returning. The first place I went to in America was somewhere near Boston, so I'm a big fan of the New England Cartel.
Right.
Rob Font did really well in his last fight. And Calvin Kattar came up against one of the greatest fighters of all time and my personal favorite fighter, Max Holloway.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he got pieced up, and that was a all-time, like, once-in-a-decade performance from Max, broke a bunch of records. But I don't think it's like bad for Calvin Kattar. Obviously, he got beat in his biggest showing ever, but he landed a bunch of good shots, and he showed how tough he was. But I think he's a great fighter. He went the distance with Zabit, won a few rounds at the end as well. So I'm a big fan of Calvin Kattar. I always root for the New England Cartel unless they go up against Max Holloway, which unfortunately for him he did. As for opponents, I was looking at the list in the rankings at 145. I would love to see him go against Edson Barboza or Josh Emmett. One of those two. I don't know what you guys have thought of, but I think both of those fights, I know Josh Emmett's number 6 and Edson Barboza is ranked number 9, while Calvin Kattar is number 5. So he is a little higher than them. So I think when he fought Max, he was number 5 or 6, so he got a shot going up. I think he could take one shot going down in the rankings, and both those fighters are going to be they stand up and bang, and that's going to be a banging fight. So I like any of those two opponents for him.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. That's a great shout right there. I have Josh Emmett as one of mine as well. I think Josh Emmett would be a fantastic fight. He's on a 3-fight win streak, 2 knockouts, 1 decision, but that decision is no shame decision. That was against Shane Burgos, one of the greatest fights I've seen in a while. So Josh Emmett against Calvin Kattar would be a fantastic fight, both standing on the feet. Calvin Kattar got such slick boxing, and we were just talking about this before the podcast started, but he is no slouch, all right? He may have lost that fight against Max Holloway, but anyone on God's green earth would have lost that fight. Max Holloway put on a hell of a performance, and you can't take that away from him or Calvin Kattar. So I'm thinking Calvin Kattar against either Josh Emmett would be a fantastic fight or Arnold Allen, because I think Arnold Allen, he deserves it here soon because he's on one of the longest win streaks in the featherweight division, if not the longest. I think the only person longer than him is Alexander Volkanovski. Then he's got the second longest in featherweight. Arnold Allen would be a fantastic matchup for Calvin Kattar because Calvin Kattar needs to start learning how to fight against the taller featherweight opponents, because when he takes a look again, or when he fights against the shorter opponents, he's got a reach advantage. He's got a fantastic jab, and he's a fantastic counter striker. So when they try to blitz on the inside, he does a great job of countering. So against those longer and taller opponents like Zabit and Max Holloway, he needs to learn how to put those holes in their game. So I think Arnold Allen would be a great step in the right direction of learning how to deal with that, and a great step in the right direction to learn how to become a champion, because I think Calvin Kattar has what it takes.
Yeah, I agree with everything Hunter and Tanaay have just said. You know, who the hell does not want Calvin Kattar back after that Holloway fight? You know, one of the fight of the year contenders already. You know, no shame whatsoever, no loss of dignity whatsoever in losing to one of the greatest who's ever put on a pair of 4-ounce gloves. Calvin Kattar can still be a big problem in the featherweight division. I believe he can be, and I believe he will be. But I do think he needs not an easy fight, but a fight to get himself back in the swing of things, get back into the rhythm. And I actually really like the points Hunter just made about getting used to fighting a taller featherweight. But I almost think that can come in his next fight after this. I think getting the momentum back is the most important thing at this point. And that actually feeds into who I would recommend for Calvin Kattar, and that is Hurricane Shane Burgos.
Love it.
I think stylistically that would be a killer fight. Shane Burgos, fantastic boxer, powerful hands, good grappling, good groundwork. Everything Calvin Kattar's good at and more. That would just be a stand-up war for the ages. You know, Kattar is very, very close in physical characteristics to Shane Burgos. I think it would be a slobber knocker for 3 rounds is probably what it would be. And I think it would be great just to get his momentum back as well, because it's not the loss that's the problem. Anybody can lose and anybody can come back, but it's the nature of the loss that could be an issue for Calvin Kattar. Getting beat up over 5 rounds will demoralize even the very best of the best fighters. So to get a win back and to get the momentum rolling again, that is the most important thing for Calvin Kattar. Now, if we were talking about his next fight after this question mark one, then I would be totally on the same page with everything that Hunter's just said. But just at this moment, I think Kattar needs to approach this next fight very strategically and his next opponent very strategically. For that reason, I would put forward Shane Burgos.
Yeah, I really like all of that. I could be totally wrong here, but I think Shane Burgos and Calvin Kattar have actually fought before. And I think Calvin Kattar won that one. But I'm not saying that would be a bad shot, because I think that would be a great rematch to do. And considering how Shane Burgos has been, I mean, yes, he lost to Edson Barboza, but that fight was unbelievable, and he was still going forward in it. This is a very interesting topic here, because obviously, okay, the first part of it, Calvin Kattar, of course, we all want him back. We all agree with that. We all already said that. He's such an exciting fighter. And I was actually talking to Hunter about this a little bit before we got started, and it's so interesting, Calvin Kattar, because yes, he got absolutely demolished against Max Holloway, but that performance is an anomaly because it's Max Holloway. Max Holloway is just that good. Look at what Calvin Kattar has done before that. The Jeremy Stevens elbow, perfectly placed, perfectly timed. Everything about it was amazing. Calvin Kattar has been piecing people up left and right up until the Max Holloway fight. And I think a lot of that has to do with the style of Calvin Kattar as well. He's very much a counter striker type of guy. He wants his opponents to come forward a little bit so he can unload on them. The problem with that style is Max Holloway is just so forward going that you can never really find the opportunity to counter. And when you can, if you do land one shot, you eat 15. So it's just such a weird matchup. But I do think his style works a lot in this division. It's just the Max Holloway fight was so weird. There are so many great fights tonight. Absolutely great. I think most of us have mentioned this. Josh Emmett, I think, was probably at the top of my list for that fight. I just think rankings-wise, it makes sense. And I think it's also just such a great matchup. An interesting part of that fight would be the wrestling of Josh Emmett as well, very underrated. And if he mixes that in, it could land a big shot over the top. How does Kattar handle that? And yes, he didn't get dropped against Max Holloway, but he ate 800 strikes from him. So how is his chin going to react to eating a big strike from a guy like Josh Emmett? Love Edson Barboza as well. Barboza is interesting because I want to see him against like a Yair Rodriguez whenever I'm assuming he'll lose to Max Holloway, because that fight would be unbelievable. Here's another one. The main event for this weekend is very interesting. Calvin Kattar is still ranked very high, as he should be. The winner of this main event still has at least 1 or 2 more fights to go before a title shot. And I think the winner of this fight could have Calvin Kattar as their next opponent. And I wouldn't hate the matchup for it either, the Korean Zombie or Dan Ige. Dan Ige is fascinating because he has so much momentum going for him now. And that win over his last opponent in like 10 seconds was amazing and got him this main event against the Korean Zombie, looking to rebound against the Brian Ortega loss, which this division is so crazy. You could talk about it forever. So I would not hate that matchup either. I just love the Josh matchup, the Josh Emmett matchup. I think that just lines up so perfectly. So that would be at the top of my list. Then number 2, I would probably put the winner of this main event against Calvin Kattar, or realistically too, the loser of it if it's a close fight. I mean, Calvin Kattar is looking to rebound off of that. But that's probably my list, and that's kind of just what I'm thinking about this whole situation with Calvin Kattar.
I would say for the winner of this next main event, if it's Zombie, yes. If it's Ige, no, because we've already seen that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
kind of recently.
Yeah.
Like Ige held his own, but clearly Calvin Kattar was better.
Totally.
And one more argument against Shane Burgos is number 14.
Yeah.
And Kattar is number 5 right now. I think that's a huge jump for Shane Burgos, and I don't think he deserves it because he lost his last 2, I think, almost right now. That's what I would say. But I love obviously the ones I picked, Emmett, Barbosa, and then Hunter said Arnold Allen. I really like that as well. And I don't know, throw Giga Chikadze in the mix. If you think he's a star, give him to Calvin Kattar.
Yeah, no, I totally agree tonight. That's the point I was going to make. I don't think Shane Burgos really deserves this shot at a number 5 position just yet. I think if you were to win one more, maybe 2 more after that, then he could face the number 5 because everyone loves Shane Burgos. It won't take much for him to get that number 5 shot. He just needs to win one. And you know what? That could be against a high-ranked opponent. That could be against a low-ranked opponent. Dana White loves his fights. He loves his fight style because he always makes an entertaining fight. So Shane Burgos is a good shout as soon as he gets another win under his column. I also agree. And like Jack said, I feel like we can't count out that loss before from Calvin Kattar to Max Holloway because when you're a counter striker, you can't really counter strike a 13-punch combo.
Yeah.
It's hard. Max Holloway is an anomaly in the featherweight division, in any division, to be honest. Max Holloway just has so much output, and that makes a nightmare matchup for anyone. So I think I really like my Arnold Allen call. I know we do want a rebound shot after this, but taking a look at the featherweight division, there's not much he can choose from because everyone's a killer in this division. I think the Korean Zombie would be a fantastic matchup for him. I think that would be a fight of the night on the spot. Dan Ige, I thought that was a very close fight. And it was very competitive back and forth. Ige did a great job of getting inside the pocket in the first few rounds. But Calvin Kattar's got a really good fight IQ, and he ended up piecing them together in the later rounds, showing him like the championship material he has in him. So I think the winner, win or loss for Korean Zombie, I would be fine with a matchup for Calvin Kattar on this point. But yeah, there's not really much else you can say. We've said almost everyone in the weight division 5 through 10. But for me, I still have to stick with Arnold Allen. I think Arnold Allen deserves it. I think this would be a difficult matchup for Kattar in some ways, but also a learning curve he needs to make. So either way, Arnold Allen.
Shane Burgos, I made the best case I could for you, and I got shot to a million pieces. I do apologize. I have to admit, I love the Giga Chikadze shout. The only problem with that is Chikadze's camp have already said they're not interested. Those are the reports that I've seen, but I do like the shout, and it would make a lot of sense. I suppose where I stand on this is the most likely opponent that's also the best opponent stylistically that will make fans want to watch, I think, is Edson Barbosa. That's a fight I would undoubtedly stand behind. And Barbosa's greatest weapon is one of Kattar's biggest weaknesses, and those are those leg kicks. I have spoken many more times than I should have about how vicious Edson Barbosa's leg kicks are. You do not walk the same way after an Edson Barbosa fight the way you did before. I can list off at least 10 examples of that. And Calvin Kattar in that Holloway fight, it's almost an aspect that gets overlooked. His legs got beat up for the first 3 or 4 rounds by Holloway. Those inside calf kicks brutalized him and completely slowed him down and immobilized him. But on the flip side of that, I don't think Barbosa's wrestling is amazing. I think the takedowns there to be gotten if Kattar can get into the inside and get it against the cage, which we have seen happen to Barbosa. So that would actually be a fight that I would stand behind. I like the Arnold Allen shout. Ranking-wise, it makes a lot of sense. I agree with everything Tanaay has said as well to the fullest extent. But I'll stand behind the Edson Barbosa fight. I think they've already fought once before, maybe. Or am I thinking of Tanaay? I think I might be thinking of I might be thinking of Ige. But that Barbosa fight with Kattar, I would really love to see. And after the Holloway fight, you can bet your bottom dollar people will tune into that too.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously I have to have Giga Chikadze on my list because he's been absolutely amazing. But I didn't mention him because one of what Keelan said, and I actually wasn't even aware of that, but thank you for making everybody aware of that. But 2, if I'm Calvin Kattar, that is the last fight I'm taking right now.
Yeah.
Giga Chikadze is on such a tear right now. Yes, he's lower in the rankings, but when you're taking a fight with that guy that's that low in the rankings, but has shown the skill set to be so high in the rankings, you're
Oh, it's
saying
such a risk.
it's such a risk. And you're coming off of fighting one of the best opponents in the division. That is just I think it's an unnecessary risk for Calvin Kattar to take. You stand behind your ranking and you let Giga Chikadze take someone else elite competition first before you're the first name putting your ranking on the line. So that's the fight that I would not recommend Calvin Kattar take. And it's not even that matchup wise. Matchup wise, it is tough. Anybody's tough against Giga Chikadze, but not that I don't think Calvin Kattar could do good, but it's just you don't know how he's going to react following the Max Holloway fight. If he gets a slow start, you can't get a slow start against Giga Chikadze. So we've seen. And anyways, but all the shouts, everything we've gone top to bottom. Yeah.
If you don't mind, Keelan, did Giga's people say no to fight Calvin Kattar?
Well, the reports that I saw, I was actually out this morning and I saw it. I think it was MMA Fighting maybe that broke it. And I saw reports, I don't know who confirmed it or whether they confirmed it or not. I just saw reports that Chikadze's team weren't interested in fighting Kattar at this point. I don't know if that's Chikadze flat out rejecting it because I think he has a lot to gain, as Jack just said. Those are only the reports that I saw.
That's what I was thinking, because if they said no, that's kind of fucking stupid. Like, he's number 5 and you're number 10. And Kattar's coming off he's coming off a beatdown. And Giga, like Jack said, he comes out on fire, and you can't say the same for Calvin Kattar. So it's a good matchup for Giga Chikadze. I'm not saying that he would definitely win, but he has to take that shot if he's getting it.
I agree with you. I think
you
make a great point.
I mean, we got to think about it this way. Giga called out Max Holloway in his post-fight interview. So I feel like he's got a bit of a big head right now. He thinks he deserves the highest of the high, which the way he performed against Cub Swanson, it looked like he does, but that's not how it works in the UFC. So he's got to take those number 5 opponents.
And Max is number 1, maybe number 2 right now. He's number 1. Yeah.
Number 1.
You don't go from 10 to 1. You go from 10 to 5 to 2 maybe, or 1 then.
He was 14 at the time too. He wasn't even 10. So
absolutely, like nothing for his performances. They've been pretty much flawless so far, but that's a silly move, I think, if they rejected the Calvin Kattar fight.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to look at the sourcing of this too, because this could be one of those situations where something gets leaked or reported, but the camp will come back and say, no, we definitely didn't say that.
Yeah.
And so it's very interesting to see, because MMA fighting usually is reliable, so I'm not discrediting the source, but if ESPN, like if a lot of the major stuff hasn't jumped all over it.
Keelan's looking on his phone right now to make sure he was right.
I'm trying to clarify this because I do want to make sure.
Because this is a big deal. This is a huge deal, because if Giga Chikadze is legitimately saying this, then it just doesn't make, like you said tonight, it makes no sense that would happen. But who knows? Yeah. Well, while Keelan's checking, let's go ahead and move on to the next segment. Another big fight has been booked in Rozenstruik versus Curtis Blades, and this is actually massive for the heavyweight division. A lot of big implications for this. Obviously, Rozenstruik coming off of a big win on the fight night recently, and Blades losing to a knockout to Derek Lewis recently. Both still highly ranked. The title implications are huge for this fight. Tonight, what are you thinking about this fight being booked and everything surrounding it?
I love the matchup, but I'd say this for both these guys. Whenever they come up against someone a little bigger or, powerful or like better, they shrink a little bit. Like you look at, honestly, I feel bad saying that for Blades because he looked great against Derek Lewis in that first round, but then he got caught by that uppercut. But that's been a trend for him. If you look at the top 3 most powerful guys at heavyweight, obviously Ngannou, Derek Lewis, and Rozenstruik's number 3, in my opinion. And I think
that's right.
That's the truth as well.
Sure.
But he falls short. He fell short twice against Ngannou and once against Derek Lewis. But I think skill for skill, he's the better fighter against both of them. Especially Ngannou at the time. He didn't have that takedown defense, nor he had the ability to stand in the clinch like that. He had that crazy power, which he'll always have. But I think Blades has fallen a little short against those really like one-punch guys. And I could say the same for Rozenstruik. Rozenstruik lost against Ngannou, which was just absurd. It was like 30 seconds of just flailing arms, and one caught him.
Yeah.
And then the second one he lost was against Cyril Gane, which was kind of a stinker, but Gane is a better fighter, in my opinion, more well-rounded than Rozenstruik. So I think this is a big, big moment for both of them. And I do feel bad because I think in a normal world, if you beat a Curtis Blades or a Jairzinho Rozenstruik, you get a title shot right away. But look at what we have in line. Dana says Derek Lewis. Everybody else says John Jones. And then Stipe deserves a rematch if we're all being fair. Let's look at it really. But these guys are going up against each other who have like really good records. They have 2 and 3 losses. That's crazy in MMA. But they're not going to get a title shot. So I do feel bad, but it is a big step up for both of them. And I hope it's not kind of a stinker, which I'm really scared it's going to be.
No, I get it. You know what? We're going to be seeing a lot of things that we haven't seen before in this matchup, which I really like. I feel like we haven't gotten a chance to see Jairzinho Rozenstruik wrestle whatsoever. Out of all of his, I think, 5 fights in the UFC, we haven't seen any wrestling. I think we might have saw a tiny bit off of the Alistair Overeem fight, but not enough to actually know if he's a wrestling contender. So that's something we need to know before he even gets a title shot. So this is a great fight for Jairzinho Rozenstruik to really feel himself out and see if he can compete against those heavyweight wrestlers. Curtis Blades, on the other hand, I think he can hold his own in this fight. Curtis Blades is a fantastic fighter just in general. He's really well-rounded. He's got good stand-up. He's got great wrestling. And we talk about the wrestlers of the heavyweight division. Curtis Blades is on the top of them. He's elite when it comes to wrestling in the heavyweight division. So both fighters is a good matchup to take. This is a great way to come back after a knockout loss to Derek Lewis. I think Jairzinho Rozenstruik is a good matchup here. I feel like he's like the B tier of Derek Lewis almost. Yep. You know, Jairzinho Rozenstruik has fantastic power, and it doesn't even look like he's powerful when he throws his strikes, but they just land and they go to sleep. So that's a lot of the same of Derek Lewis. So I think this is a great way to kind of come back after the fight. You don't really need to make too much preparations for this fight because you already made it when it came to the Derek Lewis fight. So both ways, this is a great matchup. This is the way Rozenstruik can get back to the top of the division. This is the way Curtis Blades can stay at the top of the division. But when it comes to predictions for this fight, I think Curtis Blades has what it takes to get this job done. But I don't think it's going to be super entertaining. I think Curtis Blades is going to hold him on the ground for 4 rounds, and then Rozenstruik's going to be up and around the 5th round, but he's going to be waiting around for that one-punch knockout that he tends to do every now and then. So sadly, I don't think it's going to be a banger of a fight. Like Tanaay said before, I hope it is. Don't get me wrong. It has all the potential to be.
Absolutely.
But I don't think it'll be fantastic.
Yeah, this is a big fight for a lot of reasons. Not only is it literally a big fight and that it's the biggest division in the UFC.
Oh, we got a jokester.
I like
You're
to
not
think
wrong.
yeah, not entirely, but that's a different conversation. My jokes, anyway. This is an important fight, and again, it's a fight a lot of people are going to sleep on, but it has big implications for the top 5 of the heavyweight division. And you know, the great point that was made there by both Tanaay and Hunter about not seeing Jairzinho Rozenstruik's wrestling. Curtis Blades is going to make him wrestle, or he's going to get knocked out trying, because he did that against Derek Lewis. You know, one thing Curtis Blades does really, really well that very few heavyweights can do is that he can push the pace really well. He has a really good gas tank for someone who's 220 plus pounds. And Rozenstruik's stamina to me is a little bit suspect. I mean, that's not a criticism of him. You know, that's just a natural issue that heavyweights have. But it's a big advantage that Curtis Blades has over a lot of guys. The problem for Curtis Blades is this. Not only do people not want to watch him fight, and that's not me being brutal, that is simply a fact. You can see that opinion anywhere and everywhere. I think his wrestling transitions where he enters towards his opponent are quite sloppy, and he leaves himself open a lot to getting knocked out. I mean, that's textbook what happened with Derek Lewis. He went in for the double leg and he got sent to the shadow realm because his takedown, with all due respect to Curtis Blades and the NCAA division wrestler, it was a sloppy takedown and he paid the ultimate price for it. And, you know, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I can see something similar happening again. And the reason I say it is that this is becoming a very common theme with Curtis Blades. The wrestling we're not surprised by because the wrestling is the foundation of his game, but his takedowns are not polished. They're not tidy. They're not a Stipe Miocic takedown. They're not a Daniel Cormier takedown where the there's excellent level changing and it's finished fully, is takedowns can get quite sloppy. They can become overextended and they can go on longer than they should. And that leaves the window open for a one-punch knockout artist like Jairzinho Rozenstruik. The other advantage Rozenstruik has is, as me and Hunter have said a lot when talking about Jairzinho Rozenstruik, he doesn't realize how hard he hits. So he might even hit Blades with a jab and send him to the canvas on the way, like retreating from a takedown attempt. I don't know what it is. I can see Rozenstruik finishing this. I think Blades is going to get desperate. He's going to race across the octagon. He's going to try and shoot for a takedown. And I think he's there to get knocked out.
Hey, that's very interesting. And I'm gonna start with this. I've had this on my mind since Tanaay said it, and we've all hinted at it. They need to put the potential for this fight to be a stinker is on the table. Unfortunately, it is definitely on the table. Let me throw another fight out there. Tanaay mentioned, so Champion Ngannou, you have Jones, Derek Lewis is there, Stipe is there, and another fight that I would put above this one even still, Cyril Gane versus Alexander Volkov. That is a massive fight. And that is absolutely huge for this division. I put that fight even above this one. In the line for the title. So not only are they starting to fall behind, these very, very good contenders starting to fall behind, they are starting to be seen as not as exciting. Obviously, Rozenstruik just got a knockout in the first round. But if you look at his style and the way he fought, especially against Cyril Gane, it's not – they need to put on a show. They cannot afford another stinker fight. They cannot afford to sit and wait for each other. If they want to throw their names back into the hat and really get up there with those other contenders, because there's tiers to this now. There's definitely tiers to contenders at heavyweight now, and they are behind. They're in the second tier of being in that considered championship caliber. And it is unfortunate for Curtis Blades because he was on such a tear and then lost to Derek Lewis. But it's where they're at right now. They need to go out there and put on a show. More than just winning, they need to go out there and seriously put on a great show so everybody's talking about them and it's not just on to the next one. That is absolutely huge. As for the fight itself, it's fascinating. I lean towards Curtis Blades just a little bit. I think his wrestling is going to be huge. Rozenstruik, one of the most frustrating things for him about him that I've been watching him with is that he sits and waits for so long for something to open up. And in MMA at the top level, you cannot do that. You have to open it up for yourself in order to do that. And that's what he did towards the last minute of that fight against Tanaay. And he did that, and that we talked about this on the podcast. That last minute was how he should have fought the entire time. But against a wrestler, you were so correct in saying we haven't seen him against really a good wrestler. And Curtis Blades is a very good wrestler. Despite his takedowns, like you said, Keelan, not being finished, he can't finish them as well. He is still definitely one of the best wrestlers in the heavyweight division. I would probably put Stipe ahead of him just because of his takedown defense, putting on top of it, and him being able to mix in the total of MMA. But next to that, I put Curtis Blades right there. It's interesting. Rozenstruik could time it, but the thing is, whenever he's just sitting and waiting, he's not going to find that timing like Derek Lewis was. Derek Lewis was setting that up from the beginning and looking for that. You could tell the way he was standing. And sure enough, Curtis Blades was tired of standing up with him because he thought, okay, Derek Lewis could catch me, which is possible. And then he shot in and got caught. Curtis Blades here is going to mix it up. His takedowns might not be beautiful, but I am not confident in Rozenstruik's takedown ability. We haven't seen it yet. Now that's up in question. He could be amazing there, but from what I've seen, when Curtis Blades backs people up and when Rozenstruik is being backed up, there's very little offense that comes out from Jairzinho Rozenstruik, which leads heavily in Curtis Blades' favor. Unfortunately for these guys, I lean towards the fight not being as exciting as possible because Curtis Blades, being aware of his chin, he's been knocked out 3 times now, twice by Ngannou and once by Derek Lewis, which, by the way, anybody would get knocked out. Like, literally anybody on the planet would get knocked out by those guys. So there's no shame in that. But it is there, and he's facing another guy. Like Tanaay said, I agree with him. I would probably rank him 3 in heavyweight right now for power. And he's got to be aware of that, so he's got to be extra protective. He's going to go down, try and take him down. And Rozenstruik, I just don't think will have the offensive ability to counter and put on his own offense against Curtis Blades. Hunter, I think you said it. I think that's exactly how the 5th round will go. Blades actually does tend to fade a little bit in fights. He almost got finished by Volkov in that 5th round. So I don't know if he'll be able to get a takedown in the 5th. but Rosenstrike will be waiting for that one-punch knockout, and Blades just will be avoiding it enough to where that'll go down. That's just kind of my thought process about it. It's a fun fight, and it's a necessary fight for the heavyweight division right now, but these guys have to deliver. They have to go out there and leave everything on the line because they are right on the edge. If this fight is just another, okay, on to the next one, they're going to fall out of the title talks, especially if Cyril Gane versus Alexander Volkov delivers and we get a real contender out of that. The heavyweight division is so stacked right now, more stacked than it's been in a long time. And these guys who are such good contenders are this close to being on the outs, especially if this fight does not deliver.
Jack, I like that you brought up the point about this fight has to be made. Yeah, it's the perfect fight to make. I completely agree with that. Also, I did make a prediction earlier.
Yeah.
I would say I would go with Blades as well. I think he's a little sloppy and always has that chance of getting caught, but I don't think Rosenstrike is experienced or at the level of Derek Lewis when it comes to timing like that. He has the power for sure. And I was just thinking about, like, look at us just talking bad about Curtis Blades getting knocked out by Ngannou and Derek Lewis.
Yeah.
And look at us talking shit about Rosenstrike as well, who just came off a knockout win. It's like kind of crazy.
I didn't talk crap about nobody.
I'm not saying like
don't tell him I am.
Respect. It's all respect. Don't kill us.
I'm not saying we don't respect them or anything, but we're making some good, honest points, and that's there to be said because, like Jack said, like Hunter and Keelan said, that the heavyweight division is that stacked that if you don't show up and show out, like you'll be out of the title picture pretty quick, even though you're a top 5 guy. Like it's that hard right now at the top of heavyweight. That's all I want to say. Yeah.
Yeah, no. So don't shoot me here, all right? But I'm changing my prediction, okay? The way Keelan described this matchup, it kind of just clicked to my head. I think Rosenstrike is winning this by knockout here.
Oh, no way.
I think,
no way.
The way I'm looking at it now.
Hunter, I used one of your points for my argument. You can't do that.
Yeah, you know what?
Keep
on. Them, all right? Because I could definitely see it happening. Keep those points. I love them. But here's what I think is going to happen now, all right? I think Jairzinho is going to frustrate Curtis Blades. I think he's going to – the first 2 or 3 takedowns that Curtis Blades tries to attempt, I think he's going to deny him. And then Curtis Blades going to be thinking in his head, man, I don't want to try this again or else I'm going to get knocked out. But then come the later rounds, 4th round, I think the first 2 rounds, Curtis Blades goes for a few takedowns, maybe gets 1 out of the 4, okay? 3rd round, no takedowns whatsoever. I think they stand on the feet. I think the 3rd round is not going to be a very fun round to watch. It's going to be kind of boring. They're going to trade jabs back and forth. Nothing big is going to happen. 4th round is going to come. Curtis Blades is going to think to himself, I'm going to go for the takedown now. He's going to go for the takedown. Boom. Jairzinho Rosenstrike is going to catch him right on the chin. And he's going to put him to sleep, sadly, one more time. But that's what I see what's happening now. I feel like the way we've already described it before, Curtis Blades has sloppy takedowns, and that's no actually it is kind of a diss on him, sadly. But it could be better, and he could hide them better, and he could really set them up with strikes, but he doesn't. And if he does do that, then I feel like we have a Curtis Blades win. If he sets up his takedowns with strikes, he has it clearly in the bag. If he doesn't and he has his regular takedowns like Damian Maia did last weekend, it's going to be so telegraphed, and Jairzinho Rosenstrike is not going to take that many chances to see how to stop this takedown defense with one punch. And Jairzinho Rosenstrike has the power to do that.
Boys, I can't believe it. I turned them.
Dude, I got you, Keelan. All right, we used to differ a lot. I'm with you now. All right,
dude,
Rosenstrike gang. You already know what it is.
I think that if Overeem can control Rosenstrike for 4.5 rounds, Curtis Blades definitely can.
I agree.
Yeah.
There's always that one-off chance that he'll get knocked out and get caught on his way down. But if Overeem can control him for 4.5 rounds, Curtis Blades can definitely do that.
I think this shows how close this fight is. Like, there's 2 of us that think that Curtis Blade gets it done, and then there's 2 of us that think Rosenstrike gets it done, which also, again, shows the significance of this fight. It's a huge fight for the heavyweight division. They just it has all the making for what should be a good fight. I just really, really, really hope it delivers. I don't know.
See if this pans out and it's a 5-round just dustbin fight. I'm going to be so upset.
I would love that so much.
I've put so much effort into hyping this up for Rosenstrike along with my new boy Hunter, and I'm going to be so pissed off if this ends up being a hell because I've fought so hard to argue in his favor. What I will leave you with is this, though, and it's a point that Tanaay and Jack, to their credit, have both touched on. Blades does not set up takedowns well. Like even the takedown that led to him getting knocked out against Derek Lewis, anybody could see that coming from a mile away. And like I said, with a one-punch knockout artist, you can't afford to do that. It doesn't matter if he's a full gas tank or no gas tank, whether it's the first round or the fifth, you cannot do that because he can knock you out from anywhere. And I just see Blades repeating the same mistake and doing it again. But my last point really is this, and it's an excellent point from Tanaay that I do want to expound on, actually. I think the heavyweight division is becoming a lot like the middleweight division, where it's becoming sectionalized and it's becoming tiered. It's almost like the Premier League in football, where you have your top four, your top six, and then the rest. That, in all seriousness, that is what the heavyweight division is becoming. And like with middleweight, we've talked about this at length ourselves, guys. You know, it's one thing. I don't think it's fair being booed for a good decision win with wrestling because it's mixed martial arts. We're here to appreciate all aspects of the fighting, not just the stand-up. The problem is, and the cold hard fact is, the company wants finishes. It's like McGregor said back in 2013-14, the company does want finishes. And that's what distinguishes a guy like Robert Whittaker from a Marvin Vettori. It's what separates a Cyril Gane from a Curtis Blades. Blades cannot afford to keep grinding out wins. He has to go out and he has to start taking risks. I mean, I understand his comments about how, you know, ultimately it's him that takes the risks and it's him that takes the injuries. But you also fight in a fan-driven sport. You have to go out and put yourself out there. It's one thing doing it tactically and doing work on the ground and really damaging your opponent the way Cain Velasquez or Junior Dos Santos did. But, you know, to Curtis Blades, this is just an NCAA Division I wrestling match where you get your opponent down, pin them down, and keep them there. And he can't afford to do that. He has to be more entertaining. And I think the pressure of that is going to get to him. And I think Biggie Boy's going to get another knockout.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sticking with Blades. That is such a good point, though. And we use this example almost too much on this podcast, but it's so relevant, especially to what you just said. I'm sure Hunter already knows where I'm going. Thiago Santos versus Alexander Rakic. That fight, we mentioned that so many times. This is almost a very similar situation. Obviously, that fight was higher up on the rankings at light heavyweight, but this is still a high-ranking fight at heavyweight. If one of those guys would have opened up and took a risk and got a finish, or even if they didn't get a finish, we've seen so many fights that are all out wars. And even if they want the fighter that loses, their stock will rise because they put it all on the line. That's what they have to do in this fight, especially with where they're at and what Curtis Blades has done recently, which is, you know, grind out decisions. I think a lot of his takedown style is a better version of Marvin Vettori. I think that's a very accurate example of Vettori's takedown, especially against Adesanya, where he would just kind of lean against him and try and outmuscle him. It's just, if they open up, this has potential. Blades trains with one of the best striking coaches in the game in Trevor Whitman and has great he's worked on his cardio and stuff. So let's see what happens. I am very much looking forward to it. We're split on the MMA Island podcast. Yes, tonight.
All right, so Keelan made 3 awesome points that I'll touch on.
Thank you.
I don't agree with your prediction, but you made 3 good points.
Yeah.
The tiers,
Fair.
first off, that you compared middleweight to heavyweight. You look at Kelvin Gastelum, gave Izzy the fight of the year. He's completely out of the picture now. Everybody said he did give him the toughest shot, but he's completely out of the picture. He's lost 3 out of 4. Second, he said the Premier League, which I love, top 4, top 6.
Shout out.
And then the rest, which includes Spurs and Arsenal. I know you like that.
Haha.
And then the third, you said that thing about Blades, that you need entertaining fights, what Conor McGregor said. And you look at the fight that Blades beat Volkov in. He won probably 4-1 or 5-0 in rounds. But Dana White said that I'm not happy with him at all. Like, he was talking a big game and didn't really show out, even though he won 4-1 or 5-0. You know what I mean? So just want to acknowledge those points and give my 2 cents about it.
Those
Thank
soccer
you.
references or football references. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, Hunter. You can't do that.
Time. They
You
go
can't
over
do
my
that.
head.
I've
been
I don't understand
practicing,
a
man.
word you guys are saying. That's like a different language to me.
He's on my side in Rosenstruck, I'll allow it.
Hey, I'm wearing my Liverpool shirt right now, so I'm representing as we're going right now. We had a whole.
come
This
on.
is
my Hurley shirt.
we could go on for hours about football, but anyway. So moving on to our next topic. That one got heated. And we have a very, very good main event. One I have been looking forward to for a long time. The Korean Zombie versus Dan Ige. Talk about massive stakes in the division. This is another one at 145 and one of the most stacked divisions in the UFC. We just talked about it a bit earlier on this podcast as well. Tanaay, how do you see this one going?
I'm going to say this. This is going to be not a stinker, but an absolute banger.
Yeah.
The
Yes.
lines.
Yeah.
So on my podcast, we talk about lines and the betting stuff. And I was looking at it today because you texted me the topics. And they're at minus 110, which is pretty much what I expected.
Yeah.
Given that Ige's had his recent success, had that 10-second knockout. Zombie was on fire, but then got pretty much dominated by Ortega. And this is such a tough one to call because they're both solid on the feet and solid on the ground. But I do think skill for skill, just because Zombie's been along way more, I think he has the edge. And if I had to make a pick, if I was a bettor, I would stay away from this.
Yeah.
Probably bet something like, I don't know, because it's tough to bet fight to not go the distance for the lighter weights. Because even if you look at Max Holloway, he beat up Cater, but he couldn't get the finish at the end of the day.
Sure.
So if I had to bet, I'd say it's going to be a banger.
Yeah.
It's a good bet. It's
But
a good bet.
If
Very
do or
good bet.
die, I had to pick a fighter, I would say Zombie. Do or die.
I like that. You know, Zombie's been one of my favorite fighters to watch throughout the years. I was really sad to see him lose to Ortega, but when Ortega went out there, he looked like a whole other fighter. It's hard to prepare
He
against
was
a fighter
bald Ortega then.
He looks
was at a
scarier
whole
than
other
Zombie.
level.
Bald Ortega, really. He was on a whole other level, and it's hard to prepare against a fighter who reinvented himself,
Yeah.
you know? So I'm not going to try to take too much away from Korean Zombie from that fight here. But if we take a look at his past fights, you know, he knocked out Frankie Edgar first round right before that fight. And that's what I'm going to look at right now. I'm going to look at the Korean Zombie knockout, and I'm also going to look at the Dan Ige knockout or Ige knockout. I think Dan Ige has such a fantastic way of blitzing that it makes everyone else's way of blitzing kind of just look effortless or like without effort. I mean, you take a look at Dan Ige, he blitzes and he throws his left hooks, right hooks, and he never throws just one punch, which I love and which every fighter really needs to do. You can't just blitz with one punch. You need to throw multiple combinations. And this is what he needs to do against the Korean Zombie. And if he has the potential to do that against, say, Calvin Kattar, like he did before, he was in that fight first 3 rounds. It was super competitive. And I think he actually got round 2 out of that too, because of the way he blitzed on the way on the inside. They both have heavy hands, but what it's really going to come down to here, I think it's going to come down to ground game. I think Dan Ige has really good Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but the Korean Zombie is just a beast on the ground, and he's a beast on when it comes to the feet. And that's going to give him the slight edge in this fight. So if I were to make a prediction right now, I'm going to go ahead and say Korean Zombie round 4 TKO on the ground. I think he's going to have him flattened out and he's going to TKO him, kind of like he did to Frankie Edgar at the end.
I like it.
I love that prediction. That is just great. And I agree with Tanaay. This is going to be a banger of a fight. It
sure.
has to be. It can't not be a stinker. It's got to be good. If Korean Zombie ever puts on a bad performance, that's the day I hang up my coat as a combat sports fan. It has to be lit. It just does. This fight is going to be really, really good. And the point that I actually want to link this back to is the very beginning of this episode, because the points we made about Calvin Kattar, I didn't even think to link to this fight. This could be the perfect answer that we've been looking for all along. You know, the Korean Zombie is almost like fighting a myth at this point. It's almost like Cowboy Cerrone or Diaz or someone like that. You're fighting someone who's more than a fighter. You're fighting an urban legend. And people sort of underestimate the impact of that because that carries a lot of weight in the octagon. And we've seen with pretty much any fight the Korean Zombie's ever had, he always forces you to bring out the best version of yourself. I mean, like Hunter just said with Brian Ortega, perfectly made point. You know, we didn't think Brian Ortega had hands. He came out and he looked like a world championship caliber boxer. You know, he beat the best in Frankie Edgar. He beat Renato Moicano, which people forget about as well. Mm-hmm. He brings out the best in people. I mean, look at the Yair Rodriguez knockout. That knockout. He literally forced Rodriguez to think of the last possible thing in the last second of a 5-round fight. And it was one of the greatest.
Winning, if I can interject.
Yeah.
Which he absolutely was winning. And this is what people forget about the Korean Zombie. You must bring your A+ game or you're going to get knocked out or tapped out. And as much as I'm a big fan of Dan Ige, I think everybody knows how big of a fan I am. I see the Korean Zombie getting a submission win. I think Dan Ige is going to stand and trade in the feet. I think he'll certainly hold his own, but I think he'll get clipped and I think he'll get hurt because the Korean Zombie carries real power. There's a reason they call him the Korean Zombie. He takes punishment and he dishes it in equal measure. I can see him catching Ige with a counter hook and dropping him. And I can see a third round submission due to a rear naked choke for the Korean Zombie. I agree with Hunter in that he'll flatten him out on his front, but I think he'll get a submission instead of a knockout.
Guys, oh, this is going to be so good. This fight is going to be so good. Not only is the Korean Zombie one of the most exciting fighters in the UFC, Dan Ige is also so exciting and so underrated. This is going to be amazing. There are a few fights where you can say are a lock that you have to watch them because they're going to be amazing. This is absolutely one of those fights. As far as breaking it down, I think, man, I was going to pick the Korean Zombie, and I still will because that's my official prediction. But I'm so tempted to pick Dan Ige now because all three of you guys have. But I won't be different because I have to stick with the Korean Zombie. And a lot of it will do with what you guys said, and I'll get to that in a second. But momentum is a big thing in MMA. And Dan Ige has a lot of momentum coming off that quick knockout. That was absolutely huge for him, huge for his confidence. The Korean Zombie, he fought through the Ortega fight, but that was a rough loss. And so to see how he'll rebound that after, and the Korean Zombie had been on a big win streak before that. So he has to kind of rebuild himself a little bit. And this is a tough fight to start to rebuild yourself. That being said, the Korean Zombie is so good on the feet. He lives up to his nickname more than most people can. He lives up to his nickname because of what you guys said. He will take punishment and keep going forward. Unless Dan Ige lands an elbow onto the Korean Zombie, he won't go down. That's the only thing. The only time he gets finished, the only time he gets dropped is with an elbow, a crazy spinning elbow, or a Yair Rodriguez behind the whatever, however you landed that. So as long as he can avoid that, I think a big part of this too is Korean Zombie does have a height and I believe reach advantage over Dan Ige, and he will absolutely exploit that and use that to his advantage. The leg kicks I think will be effective for the Korean Zombie. That being said, this is the point that I love, and I'm so glad you guys brought it up because if you weren't going to bring it up, I was going to bring it up. The Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for the Korean Zombie is so good. I think round 4 is accurate for Hunter. I think that's when it will go down. I think Dan Ige will start to get worked from the Korean Zombie on the feet, and once Dan Ige starts swinging for the fences because he's down, and starts going for the knockout, that's when the Korean Zombie level changes, and by that point starts wearing on the gas tank of Dan Ige. And I do also think he gets him flattened out on the front, but Twister 2.0
no
the Korean
way.
Zombie.
Get out of here.
Come on.
I just have to say it, but that'll be my official prediction. If it happens, I'm going to lose my mind. Twister 2.0 Korean Zombie over Dan Ige. It would be unbelievable. But yes, I do think a submission. I really think the Korean Zombie will be able to just start to wear Dan Ige down. But that being said, and the reason I said you could swing towards Dan Ige, I love that you brought up the odds tonight because it should be almost a dead even fight. Because Dan Ige has all the potential in the world to finish this fight. And it's going to be interesting to see how the Korean Zombie deals with such a blitzing fighter in Dan Ige and someone that has all the potential in the world to come up. But that being said, just such a tough matchup the Korean Zombie is for anybody in that entire division just because of how legendary he is and everything. It's going to be a great fight. You have to watch it. And the only thing I wish that would make this better is if there were fans there because that walkout for the Korean Zombie, seeing everybody lose their minds whenever Zombies are would be unbelievable. But yes, it's going to be amazing. A definite already fight of the night contender you can talk about. Dare I say fight of the year, but I won't say that because we've already had so many good fights of the year. But I cannot wait to see it. It's going to be amazing. Korean Zombie submission round 4. I'm calling the Twister because why not? Twister 2.0. That'll be my official prediction.
I like that you guys gave me some submission props because the odds for that are really high. Usually, I'm a Ige fan just like Keelan. I don't like to bet against. Even though I picked Korean Zombie, I don't like putting my own money against Dan Ige like I did. So I picked Figueiredo, but I love Brandon Moreno, so I didn't put anything, thank God. But with the odds so high, Chan Sung Jung by submission is plus 1,000.
Wow.
So I can just put like $3 and make all right. And Korean Zombie submission round 4, I'm gonna mix that with Hunter's, it's plus 5,000. There's a lot of money to be made on that, you know. So I wouldn't be that upset if Ige loses and I make a decent amount of money putting him up.
Those odds are insane for that. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Bloody
Forget
hell.
about that.
No
He
one's
has
expecting a
jiu-jitsu.
submission, so I guess if you guys picked it, I don't know if there's a twister prop, but I think the submission one
No
should.
way.
Plus 20,000.
But the submission ones are good, and I'll definitely look into it come fight day.
Let me give
Yeah.
you guys a crazy stat real quick.
Yeah.
Korean Zombie, every single fighter he's fought who's shorter than him, he's beaten.
Oh,
There's one fight he's lost where they were the same height. And that was Jose Aldo in his prime in 2013. Kind of hard to take that away from him, but they were the same height. That's nothing.
Dan Ige, same height.
Dan Igue's
Are they the
5'7"
same
too?
height?
They're both 5'7".
Why does Dan Ige
what's
look
the
so
reach on?
short?
What's the reach then? I thought he was taller.
Yeah.
Reach
Hang on a second.
reach is 72 to 71 in favor of Zombie.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Wow.
He has crazy reach. I remember that.
You know what
and
it
that's
must
why
be?
he gets so much power.
Calvin Kattar's 5'11", so I just watched their fight,
Yeah.
and it looked like Dan Ige was just tiny compared
And I
to
think
Calvin
Barbosa's
Kattar.
around 5'9" or so also.
Oh, he should be. He
Ige-
fights
I
in
think
lightweight.
I think
so.
5'9" or 5'8". Yeah.
Ige looks shorter, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. But when it comes to, let me tell you why the twister's not going to happen, Jack. Okay.
No,
As much
come
as-
on.
as
Don't
much as I
kill
love
don't
Ring
kill the
Haven,
possibility
I'm
for
not
it.
going to. I'm going to
Come
kill the
on.
vibe real quick. Dan Ige's got fantastic Brazilian jiu-jitsu, all
That's
right,
true.
and that's been shown throughout the time. He spends a lot of time on his back, and that's because he trusts his Brazilian jiu-jitsu a ton. And this is let me tell you why the submission it's not going to happen in general. It's because of his Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He's got such a great knowledge of Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He knows when he's going to be put into a bad position, like a rear naked choke or maybe a twister or a triangle. I think he's well enough in the area of Brazilian jiu-jitsu to not get submitted, but not to not get TKO'd. I feel like I don't think he can defend against both. It's either he's going to be defending against the TKO or he's going to be defending against the Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And since he's much better at Brazilian jiu-jitsu, that's why he's going to be defending it the most. So I'm still going to go with my fourth round, but it's going to be a TKO, boys. I'm sorry to disappoint here. And
But it's the Korean Zombie. He can land the twister. He's done it before.
I know. He landed the first one ever in the UFC, which is beautiful. It was
know.
in what, 2012, 2013?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
How
his
did everyone
debut.
see
That
it?
was his debut in the UFC.
It's
I
his
think,
debut.
too.
It's the
Yeah.
debut. Yeah.
His
There's
debut
only
was a
been one
twister.
other
Yeah.
twister that's ever happened, and that was from what, Bryce
Mitchell.
Bryce Mitchell.
Yeah, Bryce
That's the most
Mitchell.
Korean Zombie thing ever to do that in your debut
Yeah.
fight. Like that's yeah.
It's not
He
even
doesn't
real.
much get-
It's a myth.
It's
It's
not
not
real.
real.
And then he goes on to beat Dustin Poirier, I think, like 2 fights later.
Yeah.
But I mean, who's talking really? But Korean Zombie truly is a myth. I love how you guys brought this up because it's hard to fight against a myth, like a Nate Diaz or anything like that, because you have so many expectations when you enter the octagon. What Dan Ige needs to do, he's got to throw them all out the window. Okay, Korean Zombie's a fighter. He's human. We've seen him get knocked out. He can get knocked out here, and Dan Ige should not be overhyping him. I think Dan Ige has exactly what it takes to beat him. And that's why it's so split in the even when it comes to betting, because Dan Ige has all the tools he needs. He has such great blitzes. He can get inside the pocket, and his Brazilian jiu-jitsu is pretty good. I don't think he can take Korean Zombie down because when I took a look at his takedowns in his previous fights, he doesn't kind of sloppy as well. And just the way the featherweights move, they're too fast. They can get the underhooks in before he even goes to those double legs. So that's why I don't see Dan Ige landing many takedowns against the Zombie. And we take a look at the way the Zombie lost against Brian Ortega. That is not, those two fighters cannot be any more different. Brian Ortega, he fights tall, he fights unorthodox. He kind of goes for the timing rather than the speed. He's more precision rather than power. Dan Ige, he throws with power, he throws with speed. He doesn't time very well. He just has speed, which he throws out, which is fantastic, and he has power. But Korean Zombie's gone against that before, and he can do it again. So I'm going to go Korean Zombie.
Yeah, I love that breakdown. I really do. The first point that I want to make in my last section is the myth part. And I think, Hunter, you're absolutely right, especially whenever you fight a myth, when you fight a Donald Cerrone and Nate Diaz and so on and so forth, you got to throw all that out the window the second you step in the octagon. And the guy who showed the blueprint for that was actually Jorge Masvidal in the BMF title fight.
Yeah.
You got to go in with no respect for your opponent. You don't give a damn about the legacy or what you expect him to be. Go out and throw everything at him from the opening bell and beat him up. And that's why Masvidal was as dominant as he was. I think Dan Ige, that's definitely what he has to do. Whether he can do that is a completely different story. And my second aspect of this that I will briefly weigh in on, because I don't want to get on the wrong side of either of you, is the Twister debate.
Oh, come on.
I'm
Why are
not
you all against me
saying
with this?
I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm not saying it will happen. All I
I'll say
will
it will
offer you,
happen.
to quote my to
Come
quote
on,
my
man.
guy, the greatest of all time, Chael Sonnen, let me offer you this. What I will say is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in a mixed martial arts fight is completely different to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competition. It's one thing defending a twister when all you are focusing on is grappling. When you throw elbows, punches, hooks on the ground into that, it's a completely different narrative. It's one thing defending a twister in a traditional grappling competition because you know what to expect and you don't have anything that can open up your defense. When you're getting beat up on the ground, when you are bleeding, whenever you are taking dangerous amounts of damage, you will give up your back because it will override your training. Your body's natural motion to get out of the way and try and get up will override whatever training you've got. So I'm not, again, my perspective sort of falls in the middle between Hunter and Jack. I'm not saying it won't happen, but I am saying it's possible because the Korean Zombie is one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners I've ever seen, and he combines it so well with the damage that he does that he can open it up against Dan Ige. Now, whether he can execute it is a totally different argument, but is he talented enough and skilled enough to open up that opportunity for himself?
If he lands a twister, we all should owe Jack some money, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm showing up to the next podcast with shades on and like
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
coming up. Yeah.
You get
Mr.
Korean Zombie
Kennedy.
shorts. That's what I'll send you if he gets
Yeah.
it.
Hey, that
Korean
sounds great,
zombie
man.
shorts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the legendary.
Yeah. So totally. And a couple things that Keelan said that were very interesting. By the way, thank you for leaving that possibility open instead of shutting it down like Hunter did. I mean,
Hey,
come
I'm
on.
fair.
It's MMA. Anything can happen at least. Yeah.
Not
But
that.
we will see. Something I think that's interesting about this fight, seriously, is the pace that the Korean Zombie and the pressure that he'll put on. And I have not seen Dan Ige's cardio being really tested. Like I think it will be tested against the Korean Zombie. Going 5 rounds, I think that's a very important factor in this, and the grappling that I do believe will be mixed into it a little bit. So depending on how he handles that and his big power style, I think plays into the potential submission and the 4th round. That's why I do think it'll also go happen in the later rounds because they'll be less fresh. How he handles the nerves of the moment is a very important thing. And something I thought that you said was so interesting as well, Keelan, was the legend status and that he has to completely throw that out the window and lose respect of it. And that is so true. But at the same time, Dan Ige has to be aware of the legend that he's fighting. He has to lose respect for in the sense that he loves and respects the Korean Zombie, but he has to still respect the fact that he is one of the most dangerous and wild and unexpected fighters in the entire UFC, not just the 145 division. So there's a healthy middle that is so tough to reach that Jorge Masvidal reached, that certain fighters have to reach whenever you're fighting a guy like that Dan Ige has to find that balance between, because he has to still at the same time respect the fact that the Korean Zombie, even though he has that myth status, can present him the most dangerous fight of his career up to this point. But while at the same time not be like, okay, I love this guy so much, I don't want to go out all out against him. So very, very good point that you made there. It's just that is just such a hard balance to find in between in any fight, much less a fight against the Korean Zombie. So I'm sticking with my twister pick. I know Hunter put a big thing against it. I'm sticking with it. But overall, this fight is just going to be amazing, and I know we all cannot wait to see it.
Yeah, the myth part is kind of cool. I like that you brought up Masvidal, that he broke Nate. He also broke Cowboy before that.
Yeah.
Him and Till went and just disregarded Cowboy and just finished him off early. So yeah, that's definitely a good point, and Ige could definitely use that. I also had to mention that Dan Ige has never been finished. So
that's a good point.
That is a
true,
tough pick. Yeah. He's a very tough guy. Like he took bombs from Calvin Kattar. Even Barbosa knocked him down once or twice. But he has heart, man. Like he has all the skills, but he has real heart. So he's going to be a tough man to put away.
That's a great point. I didn't even realize he's never been finished. So
yeah,
that's going to be a tough one to pull through here. But if anyone can finish someone, it's Chang Sung Jung. I mean, he hasn't faced the level of competition that Chang Sung-jung has, you know. The Korean Zombie really goes out there and he gives it his all, and he knows what he needs to do. Like, if he's behind in a round or he's behind the whole fight, he'll go out there and he'll try to get that finish. Like, that's what a lot of fighters need to start doing and realizing nowadays is when you're behind, you got to go for that finish. And luckily, this main event, the reason why it's going to be so entertaining is because both fighters can realize that. So if any fighters left behind or they're starting to trail behind a little bit, they're going to give it their all. So this is a must watch, everyone. You got to watch it. I love the betting lines to bring it up. Don't bet on this fight. It's going to be super close.
Take a little prop or something, whatever.
Yeah, maybe I wouldn't hit it. I wouldn't put it in a parlay, but maybe on a straight on bet, maybe.
Or bet the twister.
Bet the twister, yeah.
I'm opening up.
Put $1 for the twister.
$1 for the twister, so you can get 16,000 in return. I'll tell you that.
I'm going to open up a market William Hill bet for a 4th round twister, just so I can get a mad return on it. I don't even care anymore. But yeah, I agree with the guys. For the love of God, Muhammad, and any other deity in the universe, don't miss this fight. This is going to be so good. This is the experienced vet against the up and coming guy. Both guys that can throw hands, and a fight that has such an impact on arguably the best division in the UFC right now. For the love of anything, don't miss it. Just please don't miss it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and here's the other possibility too. It could be a back and forth brawl for 5 rounds, which is why this fight, like you said it, Keelan, could not have said it. You guys nailed it. You have to watch this fight. It's going to be amazing. It's a fight night following a pay-per-view, so it's not going to be talked about as much, but that's why we're talking about it, giving it its proper credit tonight. Thank you so much for coming on. Great podcast, guys.
Thank you so much, man.
As always, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Check out all of Tanaay's work on his podcast, The Haymaker MMA Show, and catch him interviewing people for PFL. Lots of good stuff there tonight. He's making it happen. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube, of course. Follow us on Instagram at MMA.island. We are everywhere, literally everywhere, iTunes, Spotify included. And make sure to check out all of our work on the great website, MMAisland.net. Tonight, thank you so much for coming on. Amazing podcast, guys.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, for all the Haymaker, I'll be putting out some picks for PFL tomorrow for sure. Not a lot of people know about it, but I like to think I do. So, yeah, try your luck with me a little bit. But, yeah, thanks for having me on. Good to see you, Keelan and Jack again. And Hunter, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, man. Good job.
Great podcast, guys. And as always, Hunter and Jack, amazing. And tonight, brother, thank you so much for coming on again.
Absolutely. Anytime. I love doing it. It's just fun, honestly. And what kind of a bag are you guys getting from Spotify?
Huh.
Undisclosed.
Yeah. Think of Joe Rogan and then double it. All right.
That's what I thought. That's what I really thought.
And then add another 50 million on top of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I did it before and I didn't get a check or anything, so I was a little worried.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But
right,
thanks for having me on there.